Well, thank you again for having me, Tiffany Seawright. Folks just call me Seawright, Director of Leadership and Civic Engagement. And I'm going to quickly go through some slides to kind of tell you about what A&T does and how we kind of attack this whole idea of engagement on our campus. And then I'll open up for a few questions. And so we have a campus coalition. And I started the coalition maybe 4 years ago when I started here. Anyone that knows my background knows that this was not my wheelhouse when I came to A&T. I started 4 years ago, and the only thing they asked me in the interview that had to do with voter engagement was, do you know how to get folks to the polls? And I was like, well, at my previous institution, all we did was make sure we had shuttles in place to get folks there. And then their voter registration cards came to my office and we let them know it's in the office, come by and get it. That was the extent of my knowledge on organizing around voter engagement. And so when I came to A&T, I thought that it was important that we at least have a group of people doing this work. The work was so important. I think previously, before I came to A&T, they were doing voter registration day, Constitution Day, and then maybe a party at the polls or little activity around getting out to vote. And that's only when they had polling sites on campus. And so I felt that because it was not my wheelhouse, that I needed to reach out to various entities across campus to help with this work, as well as the community, right? What organizations are here in town or in the state that could help organize and help mobilize my campus. And so I created the Campus Coalition, and it's the Civic Engagement Coalition. And in the Civic Engagement Coalition is students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community partners are invited to that space to help. And really, it's a space where we report out what's going on around campus. We join work groups, and I'll go through the different work groups later on in this presentation, but you join a work group based off of the plan that I wrote for the All-In Challenge. And so the leaders of the coalition, though, it's myself, our Director of External Affairs, as well as the SGA president or a representative. So it may be the Political Action Committee chair. And so we utilize all of these different folks, bring them to a space, talk about what the need is on campus, talk about what's going on, updates on what's going on statewide, updates what's going on our campuses, what's the buzz around town, and how should we address these various issues that are happening. And so this was our last plan that was written in 2022. And I am currently in the process of updating the plan. My plan is written as a model. And every year we assess what's going on with our plan, and we enhance it by either adding something, taking something away. But it's a plan that I don't have to rewrite every single year. We just make moderations to it, figure out, is there a new need? Is there something we need to incorporate or something we need to take away? And so in 2022, the plan was titled Voter Engagement 2.2 because the first one was 2020. And so 2020 was seeing beyond the polls. And so 2.2 is Aggies Vote with Clarity, seeing beyond the polls. And so, I'm sorry, the first one was Aggies Vote with Clarity, and then we added seeing beyond the polls when we did 2.2. And so you'll see later in the plan what was added to the original plan. But again, this is an effort from across campus and the community to help this plan come to life. So the parts that were added, you'll see right here in this is the 2.2 redraft. These were the two parts that were added. We took our current, at that time in 2020, we took our strategic plan and we just broke it down. How do we see civic engagement working within the strategic plan, and how do we make it all make sense so that folks can find their place in our plan. And so what you'll see is we have our cornerstones, our strategic cornerstones. And so institutionalization is one cornerstone, and that is all about systemic integration of this plan, of the work, and finding support around campus to do the work. Programming, from programming, various work groups, and we'll go over those in a minute, but various work groups fall within our programmatic focus areas. And this programmatic focus area, it is different phases to the plan. So we have voter registration. Before voter registration is the planning phase. Then there's voter registration phase, which overlaps into voter education phase, which overlaps into excitement and get out the vote. That's one phase. Excitement, get out the vote, and then civic learning and engagement and involvement, which is after we vote. Then what? How are we engaged in our community? How are we learning about issues within our community? How are we addressing those issues? How are we showing up for our community? And then, so institutionalization and culture, those are going to be two, those are combined in a workshop, but we call it cultural change. And it is looking at the idea of pride in voting, pride in being civically engaged, and where is our responsibility as individuals? Where do we see ourselves as responsible citizens of this community? And so those are combined in a work group. And then partnerships, looking at who do we have in our corner? Who do we have that are 365 partners, organizations that are willing to help us do this work and not here to check off a box. For any of my HBCUs on campus, I'm sure you can, on this call, I'm sure you all can attest that there are certain organizations that only come around to check off that they work with HBCUs. So we wanted to sift those organizations out and really work with our partners that are around all year round, or at least most of the time, and always offering us help and to strengthen our program. And so the partnership work group works on sustainable partnerships that are strong and around year round. In 2022, we added a focus of first year engagement. So how do we work more intentionally with first year students? How do we get in front of them, letting them know that this is a part of our culture, right? And I think you all are, yeah. How do we get in front of them and let them know this is a part of the culture? What we have a saying here at A&T, Aggies do. And so Aggies do vote. Aggies do get involved. Aggies do research around issues within our culture, within our community. And so being very intentional about how we engage our first year students. We also added at that time voter access and protection, staying abreast of what's going on around our rights as voters, making sure that our campus is aware of their rights and advocating on their behalf. So that in that work group comes getting a polling site, securing a polling site on campus. They're the ones that show up to the Board of Elections to kind of keep their eyes and ears open about what's going on and question if anything is a red flag. So we'll look at these work groups again. So again, programmatic work groups, we have voter registration is a work group, and those students, they for every work group, let me say this, every work group have student leads as well as a faculty, staff, or community member or alum lead. So we always make sure that students are a part of the different work groups as leaders of the work group and informing us on best practices from their eyes and not from, we think that y'all need X, Y, Z. So we have voter registration, we have a voter education work group, and they work solely on putting together education material and coming up with creative ways to educate our students about their rights, about the upcoming elections, right? About where they see their selves, their responsibility, connecting the dots for the students. excitement and get out the vote, that phase or that work group, their sole purpose is to get folks excited about voting. And then when we have our A&T vote day or whatever day we choose as a campus to say we are all going to show up on this particular day, they are the ones that activate our campus. They do the activation for that day. And it could be a block party. It could be a battle, a versus battle. It could be whatever. But they create that activation. But along the way, they are drumming up excitement. So they're out on the yard, getting folks excited about voting, passing out different things to encourage them, like T-shirts and different things to wear to the poll and do, whatever it is that we have. But their whole thing is, how do we get folks excited? And again, it's not just students. We have faculty and staff involvement as well. So you'll see Miss Penny and Mario Lewis. Miss Penny and Mario, they're over faculty, staff senate. I'm sorry, they're over staff senate. And so we have them involved in it so that it's not just an activation for students, it's an activation for the whole campus. Civic learning and involvement, engagement, that's all about how do we continue this going? How do we continue this mindset of engagement happening after we vote? What are the results of our vote? What are the results at the polls? And then how does that affect us? And let's have more conversations and programs around that. Partnerships, again, that is making sure that we have strong and sustainable partners, making sure that they are acclimated to our campus. They are trained on registration. So our voter registration group makes sure that every organization that comes on our campus, that they're trained and they get a certification on how to, I'm sorry. Did someone say something? Okay. That they are trained on how to do addresses on our campus. There are 2 different ways of doing addresses on our campus. But we do workshops for our partners and make sure that they know how to engage our students, and that they register within my organization, within my department. So Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement, so that we know that they're on campus. They've gone through us and good to go, and that we have checked off or said, hey, these are credible folks. We love them. We like them. They're stamped by us. Institutionalization and cultural change, that is a group that works hard on how do we get into these classrooms? How do we become a part of A&T's infused into the culture and the fabric of A&T, right? How do we continue to change the mindset on campus and create this culture of responsibility, accountability around engagement, civic engagement, voter engagement? They also look at, okay, if students, when they get their housing, how do we get a link or some kind of message every time folks get new housing for the next year that says, hey, don't forget to update your registration. So where do we see registration, or where do we see voter engagement throughout our institution? Voter access and protection, again, I've already explained that. Those are the eyes and ears, making sure that our students, faculty, staff feel safe when they're going through this process, that we are protecting their democracy and making sure that they are knowledgeable and have the 800 number on who to call when someone's harassing you at the polls, making sure that we have the most up-to-date information on that. New work groups that are being added this year for 2.3. Well, it's 24, but I've been working on it for in 2023, but it's called 2.3 now. We've added a student social action coalition as a work group. Those students, it's a space where different organizations around campus, they have social action or political engagement focus, or it's a part of something that they do. So like our Divine Nine groups, NAACP, Black Girls Vote, these different organizations, we ask them to be a part of a space all of our student civic engagement fellows. So we have different fellows from different organizations that are paid by different organizations to do voter engagement on our campus. Our fellows are in this space. Judicial Council is in this space. Political Action Committee, they're in this space. But it's a space that is a collaborative, supportive space. We have different pockets of things going on across campus. And so the idea is that we come into this space, we amplify the work. We find areas where we can collab, and then we find areas that we can amplify. So if Delta Sigma Theta is having an amazing program, all of our organizations will amplify that particular social action, political engagement, civic engagement program, so that it's not just their network or the folks that are interested in their organizations that in their organization that's coming out to this program, but it's everybody's network knowing about this particular event that is happening. And it may be a candidate forum, it may be a mayoral mixer or something like that. And they want to we want to amplify their work and make sure that everybody knows about it, and supporting that work. It's also a space, like I said, for us to come together and address issues. So most recently what happened, it came down that there was going to be a meeting to decide where the early voting sites were going to be placed. And we know that A&T was on the list. A&T, UNCG, and then another location were on the list, and they Board of Election was voting to see if we were going to have our early vote sites. The Student Social Action Coalition got together. I gave them, these are the dates, this is the time. I don't know what time exactly, where we are on the agenda, date and time. While I was in Maryland at a conference with some other fellows, they organized, got together, put a plan together, and they all showed up. So we had over 30-something students show up at the Board of Elections in North Carolina A&T Nelia, and wanted to see, are y'all going to give us our early vote site, ready to ask questions, ready to do whatever needed to let them know that this is important to our students, right? And they did that. I said, y'all, we got an issue. Here it is. Social Action Coalition come together, say this is what we're going to do. While I'm at the conference in Maryland, they're sending me pictures, and I'm on the live or the Zoom chiming in, and I can see my students. I was like, oh, they showed up. Oh my goodness, that's great. And then they start sending me pictures afterwards and saying, we did it. And they were so excited. Well, we couldn't stop there because it was not a unanimous decision. It had to go to the state Board of Election. So what did they do? They organized to write letters on behalf of North Carolina A&T and UNCG. They wrote letters saying, this is what we want, this is what we need, these are the reasons. They did the research to figure out what are their key points on the why we need these sites on our campuses. And then they showed up to the State Board of Elections. Some came and went to Raleigh, and it was like, no, it was virtual. So that was funny to hear about. So I'm like, where is it? But most of them chimed in online to be present. And they even got a shout out during the meeting that said, we have record number of students and folks chimed in this call wanting to see what's going to happen. And the result was we got our early voting site for the upcoming election. So I commend the Student Social Action Coalition and the work that we're trying to do with that. Outreach and engagement. This group is our social media and yard team, right? So this group, their main purpose is to gather the information. So if voter education has something that they want to get out to educate the students, they take the information, they figure out creative ways to engage the students in that information. So it may be going around doing interviews on campus. Did you know? It may be doing TikToks. It may be doing a poll of some sort, but they find engaging ways to get the information out to amplify the work being done by the greater coalition. Special Pops. Special Pops is a group that, based off of InSouth data, they identify special populations on campus that they want to target and really come up with at least one or two programs or initiatives that target that particular group. So we know STEM on our campus, STEM students don't vote as much as some other majors. So if we know that about the STEM majors, then how do we draw that line of connection between STEM and getting out the vote? So they may do a series of infographics that say specifically STEM students, XYZ targeting STEM students. They may go into the STEM spaces, so the different buildings where STEM students are, and have conversations, tabling. And then our last group that we have added is our research initiative, and this is a student research initiative. And I have a group of students right now. We have over 20 students that are committed to taking an issue or a position or a bill and breaking it down in its simplest terms, making it digestible information for our students and tying it to why is it relevant to students. So they look at these issues and these positions and these bills from a student lens, and they make it make sense for the students. I give them volunteer hours for their research, but they gather the information and then give the information to various groups to get the information out however they do it. So if it falls within voter education, they do that. If it falls within registration or some other group, they do that. But their sole purpose is to get volunteer hours to do research around issues, bills, and positions, and not only just do research on it, but tying it back to why should students care about this particular thing? How does it all tie together in our livelihood and daily routines? And so that group is allowed. I actually have a meeting with the chair of that work group this evening. And so that's what I have. And so now I want to open up for questions. I think I have a couple of minutes and just want to open up for any questions about how A&T approaches voter engagement, civic engagement.
Work. So Tiffany, we are so glad to have you, and the floor is yours to share that great work that you do.
Thank you so much, Sam. Good morning, colleagues. I'm Tiffany Hinton. I serve as the Chief Diversity Officer on campus, holding an Assistant Vice Chancellor administrative role as well. But I want to talk a little bit about our institution first before we talk about the great work that we've done to kind of provide some institutional context for you, so you know how big our campus is, why we don't have all the great things that NC A&T has, although we are kind of keeping it track and doing some similar things on our campus. So ECSU is a small public institution in northeastern North Carolina. We're classified as an HBCU. Most important for our conversation today, we have done some amazing work with All In and applied for a couple of awards through them. Most recently, our chancellor won the President's and Chancellor's Award for All In Challenge. She's amazing. We have a coalition like A&T, and she doesn't serve on our coalition, but we engage her every time we have an election. She posts on her social media. She sends out communication via her listserv to the campus, encouraging our students and our employees to vote during the election season. She also will post her going to the polls and doing the same. And so she's our advocate on campus from the top leadership level. And then on our coalition, we have faculty, staff, and students as well. We are a Silver Seal campus. We have a polling site on our campus and have been designated as kind of voter friendly. I won't say that this work started in 2020, but it became institutionalized. We received a major grant from an off-campus stakeholder who allowed us to kind of build this student-based blueprint where we paid students to serve as ambassadors for civic engagement. These students are responsible for, one, conducting voter analysis. So we'll use our NSLAW data and a tool called Target Smart to download our student data into the tool and look at our students' active status as it relates to who's voting, when they last vote, where are they voting. It also tells information about parties and other demographic information that we really don't pay attention to. We really focus on, are they active voters? When's the last time they voted? Because we use that data to do phone banking and email outreach to our students who aren't active, to get them registered, to talk about the importance. We stress on our campus that voting is a right, but it's not a requirement. And so the students who want to participate, will engage them. And if we call a student and they say, I'm not interested, we take them off the list and move on. We do not have a standalone office like A&T does. And so we have a staff member who serves as a volunteer. Voluntold is kind of the term that some folks may use, but she's amazing, and she advises the students who serve as our ambassadors and do this work. Our ambassadors, again, conduct the voter analysis, and they design programs to kind of mobilize and motivate our students to vote. We have a schedule that we kind of stick to every semester. We'll focus on registrations at the beginning of the semester. So January until February 9th of this year, we'll focus on registering our students. We'll do registration drives around campus. And then we, after registration deadline ends, focus on education. Some of the same stuff you heard A&T. We'll do workshops with our students. We'll do critical conversations around social issues, why they matter, how they show up on the ballot, social issues around education, healthcare, COVID, tuition. Locally in the city, we had some social justice issues, and so we talked about that, how it ties into the sheriff elections, and the alike. Our campus and community partners are key to this because we don't have an office who kind of centers this work, and we can't rely on our students and our advisor to kind of do it all. And so we partner with kind of folks that you've heard today. You Can Vote, Common Cause, the Andrew Goodman Fellowship. They have some good resources and funds, some ambassadors on our campus as well. Our local League of Women Voters, they do registrations with us. Churches kind of do the same, and we engage our Pan-Hellenic Council, or Greeks, as well in this work. On campus, we really focus on a couple of key units. Our Student Success and Retention Office holds responsibility for our freshman seminar classes. And so we target our new students, or our freshmen and our transfer students, through the freshman seminar classes. We do the history department, criminal justice, those classes. We've looked at our NSLOB data and found that they kind of fall behind, in addition to STEM majors, in registering and voting. And so we kind of target them going into the classroom and talking about the importance of voting and registering them. We work with a host of others. I think something important to mention is our local Board of Elections. We have a really good relationship with them. They're also on our coalition team. They come in at the beginning of the semester during orientation and talk to students about how to register, their right to register. I think it's important that students know that they don't have to register on campus. They can, as you heard earlier this morning, they can, their intent matters. And if they want to register on campus using their campus address and locally, then they can. If they want to keep their voting status at home, then that's fine too. And she talks to them about mail-in and absentee voting. Some of the events that we have, again, focus on registration drives in high traffic areas. At the bottom right of the screen, you'll see our Women League of Voters came and did some registration drives with our ambassadors in the cafeteria, in the library, the dining halls, our residence halls, student centers. We also have Greek challenges. We'll ask the Greeks and different class presidents to kind of do campaigns, voter registration campaigns, where each group will do a competition, who registers the most. And they'll get like a extra bonus from SGA to do programming throughout the semester. For our education and mobilization efforts, again, we partner with campus and community partners. We've held candidate forums where we've partnered with the Board of Elections to get a list of all of the candidates on our election ballots. We reach out to them and we ask them to come talk to our students about why they're running, what their office does, and how their kind of pitch or promise to our students. And our students will ask them questions. We also have critical conversations. So our criminal justice program held a safe critical conversation when 2 years ago, when we had the shooting of an unarmed Black male in our city. And we've also had like women's suffrage events. At the bottom center, you'll see one of those events. Our students, ambassadors, partner with the history department to highlight a local community member who put her life on the line to register folks to vote in our city back in the 1990s. And so that was a good tribute and conversation that the ambassadors partnered with the history department. We also have like fun activities and programs around voting issues. The bottom left, our partner from You Can Vote came in during our paint night. We called it Paint and Talk, Chat and Paint, I think they called it, where You Can Vote kind of talked about the different offices during the primary and why students should vote and how they can register to do so. And we also shuttle students to the polls. We plan march to the polls. We also, when we're planning our mobilization efforts, partner with the Board of Elections. We'll bring our coalition member in to just alert them, as Caitlin talked about earlier, about when we're coming to the polls, because we are a small city and poll workers, we don't have a lot of poll workers, and so we'll let them know what that date is so that they can prepare for a line of students who will kind of march to the polls on a certain day. Some of the tips that I have would be one, to center your student voices, right? I think us as administrators and faculty staff members, we have all these great ideas on how we think things should be implemented or go. But what we found is we don't know everything, right? And that the students will show up to what they want to show up to and what they care about. And so it's important to engage them and to ask them or to involve them when you're planning different programs, registration drives, or even mobilization efforts during voting season. ECSU, what we learned was that our students don't care about the politics of things, that they care about the issues. And so what we had to do was kind of alert our Board of Elections when we engaged for candidate forums that the candidates during our candidate forum shouldn't really kind of bash each other, because our students weren't into that. They shouldn't come to our campus and spew, lies or names. Our students won't engage and aren't interested in that again, that they really should focus on the issues. And so that's something that we do when we are programming and training our students or talking to them about critical social issues and ballot things. Our students also, some don't really care to vote. Again, this right, not a requirement statement is real. There are times where we will kind of call during our phone banks when we're registering students to say, hey, we noticed you're not registered, or would you like to register? They'll say no, hang up the phone, don't call me again. And so just be prepared when engaging students. Some might not want to vote, and that's valid. We considered our schedule. We focus on registrations early in the semester. We partner with students and our stakeholders during our educational sessions and mobilization efforts to the polls. We always try to, when we're having educational or mobilization efforts on our campus, give out food or swag, different giveaways, because we found that our students will show up to those things. Like any program that you'll have on campus, a student is going to come if there's a benefit to them, right? And sometimes the educational piece isn't the benefit to them. Maybe it is they're hungry and they want to come get some food. And so they might show up just because you have food on your flyer. And so that's something to consider. And we, again, don't have a standalone office, so we don't have a standalone budget for civic engagement. So we've used our campus partners and our community partners to kind of fund food or swag to give out to students. Something that just came into the mail today that we ordered, purchased from a funder, was the kind of ID patches. I don't know if you can see this, but we Students are allowed to put their voter ID that they're required to have there, and any other document, and they can put it around their head and walk into the polls with it. And so we buy little things to kind of support the voter initiative. Lastly, I would share that it's important for the sustainability of civic engagement. If you don't have a standalone office, to consider your partnerships. Our coalition is kind of made up of housing, athletics, the Board of Election chair, faculty, staff, and students. You can vote, had a representative on there. That person no longer works in our district, and so we reached out to Common Cause, off-campus stakeholder who does nonpartisan civic engagement work, and they now serve on our coalition committee. And so consider partnering with folks to do this work if you are kind of this one person office, or if you don't have a designated person or office to do this work. And Sam, that's all that I have. I'll accept any questions that folks may have at this point.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so, so much. So Tiffany and Dr. Hinton, we are so grateful to both of you for taking the time to share your experience and your ideas about how you've gotten students engaged. And we are grateful to both of you for the work that you've done to really make an impact on your students around election engagement in general. You both do great work. We do have plenty of time to take questions from anyone in the audience. If anyone has a burning question on their mind, we have about 20 minutes. Go ahead and unmute or put it in the chat. I actually have a question for both of you. Can you both please speak on your relationship with other university admin and leadership on your student voting initiatives? So how have you gotten maybe some buy-in for those events, and what would you recommend for campuses and staff on those campuses who are maybe having a hard time getting their leadership to see the importance of some of these more creative efforts?
Yeah. Seawright, you want me to start?
You can. Yeah, you can.
So in North Carolina, we have a couple of universities that do this work. I work really closely with our HBCU campuses because there's this grant funding that folks have and are kind of looking towards HBCUs and trying to get them involved and engaged. And so every month, the North Carolina folks kind of get together and we talk about the work that we're doing on our campus, and we kind of pitch things off of each other and bite best practices and programs. And so we have a good relationship is what I'll say. I understand what you should know though is that folks have several different jobs. And so sometimes it's very difficult to kind of get together outside of our kind of standalone meetings that we have once a month. When we're emailing or trying to call, that might be a challenge, right? But outside of that, I think we do kind of communicate and talk to each other well. Getting buy-in on our campus has also been kind of challenging because in addition to there not being a designated office or staff member with the time to make this a priority, our faculty and staff also are stretched thin and doing 110 things. And so this isn't at the forefront of their minds. And so sometimes it takes me outside of our staff advisor to kind of shoot an email or go over to an office. But as we've started to institutionalize this and our chancellor has gotten on board, I think it's been a little easier to get folks on the phone or engaged in the work that we're doing, sending their classes to our programs or holding space during the election season for us to come in and talk to students in the classrooms. Something that we're working on is making it a civic, not holiday, but time off. We're working with HR for the employee side and with academic affairs, not to cancel classes because folks don't want to do that. Academic affairs has a hard stance on that, but allowing, a couple of hours during the day or utilizing a 3:30. We have a 3:30 break. So designating that time if the election season falls on a Thursday or Tuesday during our 3:30 break to allow folks to take some time and go over and vote.
And I would just echo what my twin said. We call each other twins, y'all. We family. The HBCUs have a really strong network. Like she said, we bounce ideas off. We have a support space through North Carolina Black Alliance, where we can bounce ideas off. If we get in, if one institution gets information about funding, we share it with the other institutions. We share partnerships. There are several. We have a 365 partnership group that works with us. And these are partners that have been vetted and for good work, good solid work, vetted. They come together. We're doing turnkey programs to just take to campuses because, and Dr. Hinton says, standalone office, but the main focus of my office is leadership and civic engagement. My office used to be the space where when we had mandated community service for graduation, this is where this was housed. Right when I got here, they took away the mandate for community service. However, community service is still a mandate for certain things within the university. So the main thing out of this space is community engagement type stuff. Because I did not have the knowledge or the know-how, I just took it upon myself to learn this work because it's so important. And this was during a time that, COVID happened. And so it just became something that evolved out of this space and became a campus thing. It didn't start like this. The support didn't start. So I utilize students. The buy-in across campus is really, I push the students. Y'all want this? Y'all see this as a need? Which one of y'all are going to put a proposal together, go meet with the right people, this, that, and the third, right? We still get pushback from the academic side. That I think that's gonna always be a thing until the mindset changes. But when you look at our new plan, the blueprint, the new strategic plan for the university, we have a new plan that takes us into 2030. And it's called the blueprint. And the blueprint actually has civic engagement woven throughout every goal of the plan. The chancellor, when we get accolades or recognition for the work that we do, he literally is so excited about it. Now, when we get the preliminary voting numbers, then that's when I'm in trouble. And I'm getting a call, Seawright, call an emergency meeting. We need to figure out what's going on, why the folks aren't getting to the polls, right? So the buy-in from the top is there. It's the middle. It's the middle we struggle with. That is why the coalition is so important, because each person has to find their place within the coalition. And speaking to the coalition, the work group, speaking to a space that they can have input and insight. But the main thing for us in driving anything we do on this campus is utilizing your students. Find those students that find this work important or make the work important for a certain group of students and let them drive it. I think that has been our biggest success, is students jumping behind. I say, y'all, this is the issue. Let me tell y'all how it affects y'all. And they say, what? Huh? Ooh, what? Okay, we on it, Seawright. Thank y'all, because I got to go do this leadership workshop, or I got to go do this. I got to, right? That Student Social Action Coalition, when it started this past semester, it just started this past semester in the fall. And when it started in that space and just talking about why it's important to have this coalition, I started off with, I don't understand why fraternities and sororities have it in their pillar that civic engagement work should happen. However, the only people that it's advertised to are the only people that show up are interests. Why is it that this work that is so important, that puts your democracy on the line, why is it that 300 people that come out to this program are only coming out to your program because they're interested in your organization, but someone over here that's interested in this work they feel intimidated. They can't come to your program, because if they come to this particular social action program with your organization, they feel as if they're not going to be able to be interested in any other organization. And then they have this scarlet letter on them that they went to your program. And so it jeopardizes their opportunity to get in another organization. We had a whole conversation around it. And when I made it plain for them and we started having conversation around it, they started realizing, like, we have been doing a disservice to our campus by the way that we program, and we got to do something different. So we enjoy collaborating. We enjoy promoting each other's programs, amplifying this work because it's so necessary, it's so needed. As soon as something comes down from the state that says something that jeopardizes their democracy, it's a blurb that goes out jeopardizing it. They add it again, and here is what's going on. And then they absorb that. When they feel threatened by decisions that are being made on their behalf, when they feel threatened, it becomes personal for them, right? When I played a sound clip for them in one of our meetings of someone in a very high position in an organization that said, get down to North Carolina, stop voting in North Carolina. Students should not be able to roll out of bed to vote on their campus. We need to do something in North Carolina. They took it very personal, right? They needed to hear that. What other space would they be able to hear that? It's the aha moments that help our students. And our students, like I said, drive the work on our campus.
And I think Tiffany talked about the middle, right? And something that we are trying to do is kind of work with our faculty and staff senate, going to those meetings, passing information to them so that they can share it with the faculty and staff on their listservs or during their senate meetings every month. And Mark put in the chat, like, how do we connect student voting with larger issues of community and civic engagement? Something that we've done was we make sure that we tie the issues to the political issues or the social issues to something community service related. And so what we had our students do was we make them do community service. Our ambassadors will plan a community service event for the campus. And so fighting hunger and insecurity, right? And how our commissioners or our local state officials kind of run that and fund that, right? We tie that in with service at the food bank or funding for local Boys and Girls Club, right? We'll do something at the Boys and Girls Club or donate something, or we'll go over, spend some time reading books to local daycares or nursery. The nursing home will do cards for the elderly, right? And so those are some of the things that we've done in addition to inviting those entities on our campus to talk to our students about the work and the services that they provide. And a lot of the times we have them talk about how can our students get connected to your organization, whether that's a job, an internship or we'll bring career development in the conversation, and we'll connect them so that they can post job opportunities or internships in our portal. We have a portal called Handshake. And some of those community partners can go in and put opportunities for our students, service related, job related, internship related, into that portal. That's some of the things that we do, Mark. I hope I answered your question.
Excuse me. Yeah, yes, you did. Could you say a little bit more though about, like, when you have events, or no, sorry, when you have folks do community service, do you incorporate an explicit connection to the different political offices that would have an effect on that particular issue, whether it's education or the unhoused or whatever? Do you have examples of that for either of you, where you bring in, we make that connection explicit somehow?
So we work with various organizations that are issue-based organizations, and we bring them in to do workshops, to do programs. We actually do a voter education fair where we have different tables set up. We have a DJ outside, and it's a passport program, and you go to different tables and learn about various issues. We try to connect students that way. But we also have within our Student Action Coalition, we have our bar fellows that are a part of that, and their sole responsibility is to activate the vote, of course, but also to get students interested in going to local civic meetings. So each month there's a focus on a different civic meeting. Board of Election, Education Board, Zoning and Planning, County Commissioner, City Council. And so the idea is every month we highlight a different a different civic meeting and try to get students to show up, just show up. And, you know, we have education around it, like, okay, City Council, these are the decisions that they make. This is how it affects your life. We need y'all to show up. They offer virtual, they offer in person. We want you to show up, wear your nail, right? The next month, it may be a different one. Whenever we are on the docket at the Board of Election, we're going to continue to show up until we see some movement, right? But the idea is to start connecting organizations to these different meetings, and those organizations do their own push for the meetings. So as we continue to grow our Student Action Coalition, it may be 2 or 3 organizations that adopt county commissioner, right? And their only thing, their thing for the coalition is campus-wide, to their network, to whoever, to really push, y'all come join us at the county commissioner meeting, right? Because until students don't know what they don't know, that's a big thing. And they don't know a lot, right? And until we connect the dots for them, you got to make everything relevant. And Twin said it before, they don't care about all this stuff that's above their head. How does it help me right now? I need to be able to see instant results and get gratification in the work that I'm doing, and how I connect to this poll, how I connect to these different meetings and these positions. So until we break down those positions for our students and show them how these positions make relevant decisions on your behalf, they're not going to be interested. But those are the different ways that we connect issues like education, criminal justice reform, all of that. We bring them in the space with the work that we do. So I may get an organization to come and just do a spotlight, right? We are entertaining now now that we have our coalition up and running. We're entertaining a Live After 5 once a month, where we're going to bring in organizations, and their sole responsibility when they come in that space for that 15 minutes that we spotlight them is to go in on whatever issue. This is your time to sell students on get out the vote on this issue. This is how this issue is affecting you. These are the positions that affect this particular issue. This is how you can make a difference with this issue. But we have to bring them to our campus and put them in front of our students. But we got to put them in front of them in an engaging space where students want to be. Like Twin said, food, music, that always helps.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thank you very much. That's really helpful, both of you. Thanks.
Is there anything y'all have noticed as particularly effective or ineffective in converting those voter registrations to actual ballots cast?
the gap is education. So I tell people this all the time. We don't struggle with registration because it's gonna be a fun event, and you know, folks out there with music and everything, they're going to get registered, right? Where we drop the ball is the education piece. So in the past 3 years, that has been the big thing on our campus is how do we educate them about the position? We've even done one way is I ordered t-shirts. In the last election, I ordered t-shirts that had different positions on the t-shirts, right? That's all it had is a navy blue t-shirt and white writing. It had county commissioner. On another one, it said judge, whatever judge, right? And so what we did was a flash mob. I had a whole gang of students that wanted community service. Okay, come get these shirts. Here's your script. Learn who your position is. Learn this position like the back of your hand. And at this time on this day, whoever you're around, have a conversation with them about this position. That's your only job, and you'll get your hours, right? And so there were different times throughout the day that they were supposed to stop what they're doing. If they're in class, they should have had a conversation with their professor on the front end of class and said, hey, at this time, I have to do a 5-minute spot on my position. Is that fine? If the professor said thumbs up, that's what they would do at that particular time. If the professor said no, then you got to make up your time at another time. But we did flash mob with it. But the education piece, that's the biggest issue. We're finding more and more that students are coming to campus not ever having had a class on civics or anything. They don't know these positions. They don't know anything. Like I said, they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, and I think something that we've done was invite like You Can Vote, Common Cause, Black Alliance to the table to talk to our students and make it plain for them. And they make it culturally relevant too. So they'll like investigate what we got going on, and they'll speak to that in the language when they're talking to our students about the different offices, about what's on the ballot, what's on the voter registration form, right? What boxes do you need to complete? Make sure that you complete. What are some of the things that you can, although we don't encourage this, you don't have to fill out, right? Like they break it down to them in layman's terms. And then our ambassadors have been very important because they'll create like little handbills or little pamphlets. They'll send out a flyer to our students reminding them of kind of different information like voter dates and who's on the ballot and things like that. And our campus community partners like You Can Vote, also do like Caitlin, what are those things
The
that
bridge
y'all have,
cards.
like candidate? Yes, punch
Bridge
card.
card.
Yes. And
The
sorry.
voter guides? Are you talking about
voter
those?
guides too. No, they don't. Do y'all do
No,
that?
the little fridge cards are like the postcard
Oh, the
size.
bridge cards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If I can, let me just add one quick thing to what Dr. Hinton just said too. I mean, when I did the what's on the ballot just now for y'all, I did like a broad overview in general because there's people from all over the state. But just like she just said too, when you're doing a campus presentation or a specific location, one thing I love to do is just Google like, what did the county commissioner of Guilford decide last week? And if you're giving a presentation at A&T, talk about what the decisions that they actually made. So then it's not theoretical. Like you might have noticed when I just was talking to y'all, I was like, they could make decisions about funding mental health or funding this. You know, the possibilities of the offices, you know, these office holders can make a lot of decisions about a lot of things. Another really impactful thing though, to talk to students is say like, this is actually what they did. You know, in addition to colleges, You Can Vote does high school presentations. And when we go into Guilford County and say, you know, the reason why your school starts at 7:15 a.m. is because the school board voted on that. And if you lived in Durham County, you start at 9:15 a.m. That's because the school board voted that way, right? That's not a hard and fast rule across the state. That's a local decision that was decided by a local office holder. So the more local information and the more kind of you know, proof of what actually has happened can be another great way to talk about, you know, the decisions and what impacts it has directly on all of our lives.
My the new group that we have that's doing the student research, they're actually choosing majors and finding policies that affect the majors so that we drive it home for individual people versus a collective. HBCU students should care about. No, nurses, y'all should care about XYZ because this is a decision that has been made in the past. And if you want to have say so in it, you got to get out the vote kind of a thing. But they're breaking down majors and policies and decisions that affect the majors.
Those are all really great points. So it looks like we are just at about time. So thank you again so much to both of you, Dr. Hinton and Tiffany Seawright, for sharing so many great and relevant ideas that I'm sure have already started some creative wheels turning for everyone. Anyone on the call, if you have more questions or if you have a resource that you want to share with anyone else on the call, go ahead and reach out to me and I'll make sure that that information gets communicated. But I do want to get you out of here on time. I know that you all clearly have a ton going on campuses that you have to get to. So with that, we've come to the end of the March Primary Campus Activation Day. So thank you again to all of our partners of the NC Campus Voting Coalition that made this call. So that's All In, Campus Vote Project, Civic Influencers, Common Cause, Equality NC, NC Campus Engagement, NC Conservation Network, Vote Writers, and You Can Vote, as well as Adam Steele and the State Board of Elections, and of course, Tiffany Seawright, NC A&T, and Dr. Hinton from Elizabeth City. So again, if anyone has any questions about the organizations that we mentioned or about the presentations that you saw today, we'll make sure to get that contact information to you. So thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon and a very happy primary election. So thank you all for joining, and best of luck to everyone.